All right, guys, welcome into Dog Central Live on a Thursday night. I'm Graham Coffey. That's Josh Hancher. You can find both of us on Twitter at the handles you see under our faces. Josh, we're finally here, man. Feels like it's been a long time since the Ohio State Georgia matchup was announced. And then, Christmas comes and you blink, and now we're 2 days away from kickoff. How are you feeling about this thing?
So much of the pressure as a lifelong Georgia fan that's with championships unfulfilled was taken off. So it's really kind of enjoyable to get such a big matchup. And I'm glad, we got Ohio State. I mean, I said it to one of my Twitter friends who's actually a Buckeye fan. And I said, I was like, these are the teams I wanted to play, Michigan, Notre Dame, Ohio State. So it's pretty awesome. We're the number one seed. We've got them at our home away from home. Actually, it's our home. It's our second Atlanta home, I guess, right now after Bobby died. So I'm going to the game. My friend Paul has got me a sweet seat, and I am really, really excited.
Awesome. Yeah, no, it's definitely, in terms of history and brand power and, I guess the idea that styles make fights, you got the flagship Big Ten school. Alabama fans aren't going to want to hear this, but Georgia, in this very moment in time in the college football zeitgeist, is the kind of the flagship SEC program as it stands today. So yeah, it feels like everything you want out of a playoff matchup. No disrespect to Cincinnati, or even TCU for that matter. But this is not like Cincinnati Bama last year where it kind of felt like a little bit of just a foregone conclusion or a routine playoff game. This is big boy stuff. And it is interesting hearing you kind of bring up the pressure being off, because I feel the same way. Obviously you and I both talk to tons of Georgia fans and have them in our family and friend groups and all of that. But yeah, man, I mean, this time last year, it seemed like there was just this palpable anxiety. And right now, talking to Georgia people, they're fired up for this matchup. But the sky is not going to fall. If they lose this game, then they'll be 13-0 SEC champions that won a national title the year before and just signed a 6th straight top 3 recruiting class, and will plan on probably being back here again next year. So it is odd for a team like Ohio State, who lost their last game of the season, to come into a matchup, and it feels like the pressure is really on Ryan Day and kind of the Ohio State program.
Oh, big time pressure. Big time. They've had more talent. Georgia and Kirby have got it rolling since 2018, but the famous quote from Harbaugh is, Ryan Day was born on third, thought he hit a triple. So absolutely another. The pressure is 100% on them. Back-to-back losses in consecutive seasons to Michigan, and they got pretty well handled the last time they were playing an SEC team in the championship game. And was it championship game, or was that the semi in the 2020? I guess it was a championship game.
It was a championship game against Bama. Yeah.
Yeah. And, they had I think, I can't remember if it was the Orange Bowl or not, but it was a great game between Clemson and Ohio State, and Justin Fields got him over the hump in that game. But no, it's tons of pressure on Ohio State. It's not, and so I don't think that. Kirby seems to be locked in. You had your notes on Dog Central today talking about how focused they were. They looked to be more focused and more prepared and taking this game more seriously than even last year. But you can tell just right around media day, they're pretty loose, which is focused and loose aren't mutually exclusive.
Yeah. No, for sure. And dude, Stetson Bennett looks comfortable, going in front of the media, this kind of feels like old hat for him. And it just seems like Georgia, this will be the 3rd time this year they've played in this building, and the first 2 went pretty dang good for them. I think Georgia scored almost 70 first half points in 2 games in Mercedes-Benz Stadium this year. So it's going to be interesting to kind of see, are they able to just stay in that groove after this long layoff, or how we think this thing's going to play out. Anything kind of before we jump into like super specific stuff? Is there anything in the success rates or in the tendencies and all of that stuck out to you?
Yeah, I mean, everyone talks about they're still focused on this Georgia defense, and once again, it seems like the offense is overlooked. Stroud and back-to-back Heisman finalist, and prolific offense. I can't remember. They're both squads are top 10 or so in points per game. But I put out a stat earlier today, sort of talked about Ohio State has given up 33 plays of 40 or more yards, or no, I'm sorry, touchdowns of 20 or more yards. They've given up 33, and more than half of those were in games where that score brought it to one score, or increased their deficit over the team, or tied it. So they've given up big plays in critical moments. Georgia's only got 7 such plays, and 3 of them went to bring it to a tie game or keep it within one score, and a couple of those were in the SEC championship game. So I think there was a lot of people realizing we had some stuff to clean up from playing LSU in that game, but nothing. But they need the big plays. I'm not sure Georgia's going to give them up. And Georgia and Ohio State both have 5 plays of 60 more yards scoring touchdowns. So it's Georgia's on pace with them. And those are very rare plays. Obviously, both teams had 5 for the whole season. You can't count on them. They're an aberration and stuff. So I think that the misnomer is that this is Ohio State's defense, Ohio State's offense, and Georgia's defense. I think I agree. I think Monken has, we're all, the comment about 13 personnel got us going earlier in the week and stuff. But I do feel like this could be yet again another coming out party for Stetson Bennett and company.
No, 100%, man. And I mean, you bringing up kind of Ohio State's defense giving up lots of touchdowns to teams before they enter the red zone. And on the flip side of this, like I've got a little stat in our notes here. Like Ohio State this year in all of their games, 5.2 points per an opportunity. Like they meaning like, in points per an opportunity, better than I do what some of these terms mean, but like an opportunity, at least from the data that I pulled it out of, is considered anytime they cross into an opponent's 40. So like you look at their season, when they got inside the 40, they scored 5.2 points on average. Like they scored touchdowns. They did not kick field goals. And then they get in that Michigan game and they're 2.6 points per an opportunity. Right. And so like, I think that's what's really interesting, because there is this idea behind Ohio State kind of, over the last decade, it seems like, where it's like, oh, hey, this is a team that's big, passing, score from far, and all of that. But like the reality is that like they need to drive the ball, and that's how they've lived all year. And the last time, really probably the best defense they've played this year was Michigan, and they really struggled in the red zone against them. They had some success between the 20s, but they could not convert and knock the door down. And
you saw that a little bit in the Penn State game too. And I've got up here, and on the flip side, this is defensive stats, but it's interesting. You see Georgia at the top there, allowing just 23.6% success rate inside the red zone. And you can see Ohio State is, middle of the pack behind 37.8 behind Georgia Tech and Stanford and Miami, and Georgia's allowing just 1.4 yards per play. So inside the red zone. So if we definitely want to limit these scoring opportunities, and I can see Georgia, as they have all year long, made it really, really hard to score and capitalize on, like you say, those scoring opportunities, especially when it gets down inside the red zone. Obviously every offense as the field gets tighter, sort of loses a little bit of efficiency because there's less yards to move around. But Georgia has for 2 years now been just absolutely elite, not allowing teams to score and move the ball inside the red zone.
Yeah, 100%. And I think, I guess the thing I want to stress the most, like looking at the profile of this Ohio State team for me, is just that there is not a Jamison Williams on this roster. Like, there's not there's some good wide receivers. Ibuka and Harrison are very good wide receivers, but there's not that burner type that, like, if you get him matched up on a safety, like he's going to house you because he runs a 4.28 40 and he's just going to blow past everybody. Like, Harrison's a really great receiver. He's very good in the air. He has incredible hands. He has incredible body control. He's excellent in 50-50 situations. But he's not the guy, in my opinion, that is going to, run down the sideline and catch a ball, that's 40 yards downfield and then run another 30 for a touchdown. Like, I think that's a big deal in this game, is even if Georgia does give up some plays, as long as they make those tackles and, force Ohio State to play them in the red zone where the field gets tight, I like Georgia's odds of holding them to more field goals than touchdowns.
Yeah, I just had that stat up there. Ohio State versus Michigan had 20% success rate in the red zone in that game, and that clearly cost them, and they were settling for field goals and turning the ball over, and it was just kind of a disastrous game for them.
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, one thing that I pulled here, just kind of put a cherry on kind of the thread of this conversation we're having right now. Ohio State's offense is really, they're very reliant on their run game, and even like 4-yard dink and dunk type plays. Like, they do not do well when they get into third and long, second and long situations. And I mean, people don't realize this, but they've actually, like, Ohio State has a higher ratio of run to pass this year than Georgia does. Like, this is not, an air raid attack kind of thing. Like, they run the football, and they've been very efficient and effective doing it. I mean, they've got a rushing success rate of, what do I have written down here? 53% on the year. It's very good, 53.1%. But the thing that flipped out, or that kind of stood out to me, is like they are not good when it gets third and long, and they have had a hard time, I think, in those situations. They've been good at staying ahead of the sticks, but their passing down rate, which is basically second and longs and third and longs, is just 24.7% of their plays this year. But their passing down success rate is only a 32.3%. So yeah, they're not somebody that's going to, like, if Georgia's able to, I guess what I'm trying to say here is, if Georgia's able to control that run game and play some decent coverage with their linebackers on, Ohio State's tight ends and running backs, like, I think this could be a pretty long night for the Buckeyes, just because CJ Stroud is a lot of things, but he is not a guy who has shown that he can just bail you out in 3rd and 7, 3rd and 9, 3rd and 11, all the way down the field. That's not who he's ever been. Maybe he becomes that guy on Saturday night, but there's nothing here that tells me that's going to happen.
Yeah, you want to start off with this first drive from the Michigan game here, as we go through some more of your notes here. I don't want to break up your.
Yeah. No, you're good. I think for me, the thing that kind of stood out for me early, watching this game and, even some other games, is just like, they didn't really seem comfortable trying to just go up the middle. Is this? Oh, you've got drive 9. Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, like they rarely go all the way under center. They're in shotgun 66.5% of the time, and they're in the pistol the other, another 20% of the time, roughly. So almost 87% shotgun or pistol. But they run outside zone a lot, and especially in that pistol, they'll run outside zone and they'll get their linemen moving laterally. And so, early in this Michigan game, they did not seem – their opening script was not designed to test the middle of Michigan's defense. Like, this is a 3rd and 1 play, and they go with a little kind of outside run there, or the running back bounces outside, and it's a nice play. But like, you see these like reverses and screens, and I mean, that's terrible tackling for Michigan there. So that turns into a 20-yard run, but there's 2 or 3 guys that have that player dead to rights for a tackle before it happens. And this is big, right? Like, this play we just saw right here coming off right tackle, like, this is a lot of their running game. A lot, like, on the whole, 42.3% of their rushing attempts are going to go outside the tackles. And even when they are going between the tackles, a lot of that is going to be on the right side of the line. Like 30% of their total runs have gone between center and right guard, or right guard and right tackle. So 75% of their rushes are going to come outside the tackle or involve that right guard, right tackle combo. And I think that's, a lot of this game is how Georgia is able to kind of handle that right edge of the defense. Because they do have a very talented, I think their tackles are much better than their guards. Like, I think they have, right tackle number 79 is very good, DeJuan Jones, but you see there, like, more outside, and that's how they opened up against Michigan. And it was kind of telling to me that, like, they at least didn't feel like early in the game that they could come out and attack the middle of the field, whether that be through the air or on the ground, and have success. And by the time, they did at some points, like, run the ball for a couple of yards into the center of the field, but it's just offensive scripts tell us a lot. That play was interesting to me as well. That's Stover, the tight end, and just kind of, he's not a blocking tight end, really. He's the ball's being thrown, he's running a route 80% of the time, but they use him on those little, like, pick play action RPO things, and Michigan defended that well. And I think that's something that, like, Georgia's speed at linebacker will take away and make difficult. That's a Buka, right? Like, I think if you've been getting ready for this game in any form, you've probably heard his name by this point. Like, this entire pass game runs through him and Marvin Harrison Jr. Combined, they have over 2,200 yards this year, right? Like, over 200 targets between the two of them. You're going to see Buka a lot more in the slot, working in the middle of the field, and you're going to see Harrison out on the boundary. And, like, that's going to be interesting because, I think it's going to be Javon Bullard on Buka all day, and probably Ringo on Harrison. And I just – like, if that doesn't work for Ohio State, like, if both those guys aren't making plays, I don't really know what they do. I think it's going to be like a very, very long night for them, because they just, I don't know. That's just kind of how they run their offense. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, they're good on offense, and those guys are studs. So you're expecting plays to be made. I mean, we saw them go LSU go after Ringo. So I would be shocked if Harrison doesn't get some yards and go over 100 and maybe score a touchdown. Hopefully you just stay focused, make adjustments, and you limit those opportunities and limit those big plays, because the offense is very, very good, but it is a sub 50% offensive success rate. So they need big plays, and they're counting on those. But if you can limit those, and keep them, around 42, 43% success rate, yeah, it could be a long night for the offense, long and frustrating. And, maybe you get in CJ's head, and if we can stop him on that first read, like you pointed out on a lot of your notes on the site, and make him stay in the pocket a little longer, and he can get him to make some mistakes as well.
I'm going to say something that's going to get me in trouble, especially if any Ohio State people watch this video, but I believe it in my heart to be true after watching a lot of tape. There's a lot of things with CJ Stroud that are similar to, like, some of the things we saw with Hendon Hooker in the lead up to that game, where I kind of felt like, yeah, like, this is going to be a problematic for Ohio State if the first read isn't open. But the difference is with Stroud, he doesn't have the legs. He hasn't shown like a willingness to run in a lot of situations. So if you blitz him, there's really no penalty for that. You know what I mean? Like if you blitz him, you're not going to leave a giant hole behind your line that he's going to all of a sudden gash for 30 yards. Go back to that last throw if you don't mind, real quick, Josh. Like, I mean, like this is a god tier throw, dude. Like this is sick, man. You know what I mean? Like this is a really impressive throw. And there's no defense for that throw. That's a perfect throw. But like, I guess what I'm driving at here is history tells us that like he's not going to do that to you all night in a game like this. Like he will flash that and it will be incredible, but you know, he's not super comfortable in a lot of situations throwing to that left boundary, man. Like on throws of 20 plus yards outside the numbers to the left this year, he's only 3 of 12 passing. So I guess what I'm saying is like if Georgia's able to play, it's a similar story to Tennessee, right? Like if Georgia can take away, like not even take away, but like just tackle well and relatively contain a lot of this like mesh stuff, like these short crossing routes and slants that Ohio State likes to run, and force him to make throws like that right there. Like you see Michigan playing that inside leverage on them. I think it's going to be a bad night for the Buckeyes.
You see, that was not even a red zone attempt there that would have shown up, but you can still see that offense sputter. You know, 5.2 points per opportunity, like you said earlier. That was one of the drives that led to only 2.6 points per opportunity. Again, gave up that sweet play, that incredible throw to get him into that scoring opportunity. But, you know, the defense buckled up, and I expect that, you know, Georgia's defense to be able to do that if you can, you know, make him throw those plays out, you know, like, and just stop them. You're going to get yards, but, you know, and this by no means is a bend don't break off defense, but yeah, but right. It's going to, they need the big plays. They can't get mired down and try to score on Georgia, you know, with a bunch of drives that are going to be, you know, 20 starting at, or not starting, but first down inside the 25 and whatnot.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, you were talking about Ringo earlier and, like, you know, LSU picking on him and stuff. And like, Ohio State's going to go at him. I mean, like, that's what comes with being a corner in football, right? Like, people are going to throw at you eventually, especially when you play for Georgia and Georgia takes away, you know, so much else that an offense can do. I do like this matchup for him, though, a lot more than I liked the matchup against, like, Jare Jenkins from LSU or some of the other receivers he's faced this year. He just, I think in this game, in this situation, like, he is in a spot where he can play press coverage, you know, like Harrison's not too fast to where if he misplays a press coverage just slightly, he's going to get burned down the sideline for a 60-yard touchdown. Like, I think this is a good matchup for him because I think Harrison's a physical receiver and I think he's a physical corner, and I think those two are going to battle it out, and it's going to be fun to watch. But Harrison is not a twitchy receiver like some of the guys that Ringo maybe, you know, has had a little more trouble with at times in the past. And I think because of that, I like the way this lays out for him a lot more than I would, you know, against some other high level wide receivers in college football.
You want to talk about the Ohio State defense, or we got some more things to wrap up on the offensive side of the ball?
No, we can get into the defense.
All right. I'm trying to queue up a couple plays based on your notes in here. So
all good.
What you're not seeing behind the scenes is a million plays go by in a second. But just jump in, man. I'm going to have this ready when you.
Yeah, I mean, I guess what I was going to say is, you know, the Michigan game, Ohio State really didn't play that bad on a down-to-down basis. And if you're watching this, you've probably heard other people say that, and that's because it's true. But, like, I mean, Michigan had this is what's very fascinating. Like Michigan had 7 carries for 175 yards when running in the gap between center and right guard in that game against Ohio State. The Michigan running backs only forced 2 missed tackles on those runs, on those 7 carries for 175 yards. Only 51 of those 175 yards came after contact. So what I'm saying is Ohio State's linebackers, like they just misplayed the shit out of their run fits. And then you see Ransom there, Lathan Ransom, number 12, diving at Donovan Edwards' ankles. Like an SEC safety is fast enough to come from the same hash right there. And like that's an angle that doesn't get erased in the SEC in a lot of scenarios, right? Like, so I do think that there is a team speed differential, I guess I'll say, between these two. And at the same time, like, do I expect Georgia to bust multiple, not even 70, 80 plus yard touchdown runs? Like, do I expect them to bust, one on Saturday? No, I don't. Like, I think that, like, as a linebacking core, they can fix that, like their run fits. Like the thing with Ransom missing that tackle at the second level, like that is an athleticism issue, but those run fits from the linebackers, like that can be fixed. But I don't know. You just notice in this clip, like there's nobody on his heels, when this touchdown gets scored. And Donovan Edwards is a little bit of a unicorn in terms of Michigan and Ohio State standards, but Georgia's got like quite a few dudes that run that fast on offense,
Before we move on from Latham, I just want to show this one. Here's
Ransom, the safety.
Yeah, here is the freshman tight end. Freshman tight end, the Mary Delt play here. That's for you, Mary, if you're watching.
Yeah. What's hilarious, man, is like I saw a bunch of people talk this week, and I really like Josh Pate. I think he makes great content, and I think he is doing this for the right reasons. And so this isn't a knock on him, but he mentioned on his show that Ohio State's pass defense is second in the nation in terms of yards allowed to running backs and tight ends, and 109th in terms of yards allowed to receivers. And my counter to that would be like, I don't know, who's the best tight end they faced? Like, who's the best running back?
Well, the Notre Dame kid.
Pass catching running back. They faced. But I mean that quarterback for Notre Dame was like, he didn't even know how to like throw the ball at that point in the season. I don't know. Point being,
I think it's a cherry pick stat for sure. I mean, I'm sure I've got some of those too. That'd be like that just. But it's just he's making content, and we're here to
and so are we. I'm just saying, like,
exactly.
I don't find any concern in that from UGA's standpoint, because there's just not anybody out there that's got a Brock Bowers and a Darnell Washington. There's very few out there that have an Oscar Delp, and he barely plays.
Exactly. I mean, he's not even Notre Dame, like you said, the first game of the year. No one had a tight end that was even critical to their offense. It's not even close. So it's kind of like, sure, there might be their linebackers are probably good covering the running backs. I think you can say that from that stat. But that doesn't mean that Kenny McIntosh is still not going to catch 6 balls for 70 yards and a touchdown. They just, it's just, this is good on good. And 4 of the offenses that Ohio State faced were 100 and something or worse. And that wasn't even Toledo. Toledo is one of their better offenses. I mean, we're talking Indiana and Iowa, and these are terrible offense, just terrible offenses. So it's not like, you can really take anything from that. And I know someone was taking shots at the defenses that Georgia faced, taking shots at, Tennessee but
sure. But I mean, dude, that LSU defense was pretty good. before Georgia. There's a reason a lot of these teams aren't ranked in the top 25 nationally in defense anymore. It's because Georgia rolled up 600 yards and 50 points on them.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but there is like a little bit of, what was the thing that like broke their stat, their statistical like performance for the season. And I don't care about what these teams are ranked. I care a lot more about like relativity. And if you look at Georgia's like net yards per play relative to other teams that Georgia's opponents played this year, Georgia's outperforming, week by week by week by sometimes as much as 2.5, 3 yards. So I'm not worried about that. But I guess, talking about this defense, we talked about Ransom, and I think he's not a very impressive tackler. And I think Georgia is probably going to see Bowers and or Washington matched up in man on him at times. And I wouldn't be thrilled about that if I was an Ohio State defensive coach. And I think Georgia's got a chance of busting one of those like tight end screens to Bowers in this game, because I think with Ransom, like if Georgia can do any sort of misdirection to freeze him or get him moving a few steps towards the middle of the field in the wrong direction and then throw back to the tight end or to somebody, I don't think he can recover. And, this Eichenberg kid is really fascinating as well. Number 35, Tommy Eichenberg, the linebacker. Cause like he grades out well, right? Like PFF like gives him a good grade, and I think he's pretty heralded and people think he's pretty okay, right? Like, but I turn on the tape and I don't know. I'm always hesitant to say shit like this because it kind of plays into like old Big Ten SEC stereotypes. But you turn on the tape and he athletically does not look like a dude that should be on a field with some of Georgia's running backs and tight ends. And I don't think he can cover Kenny McIntosh. And man, I don't think he can beat Georgia to the edge of the formation if Georgia wants to run some swing passes or, do some other things to cause him to have to pursue sideline to sideline. So it's going to be interesting, but on the season, he's only been targeted 28 times, but he's given up 23 catches. Now he's only allowed 160 yards, but he also has been playing Iowa and Northwestern and some of these teams we've talked about. And I think for Georgia, if you can get the ball in someone's hands, you have a shot of breaking some big plays in this game, because I do not think this team speed is there at linebacker and safety. And in the middle of this defense is not very fast pursuing to the edges. And with how Georgia blocks on the perimeter, how Georgia's wide receivers and tight ends block downfield, they're going to, Georgia's going to lock up these corners on the boundaries. And so if you're Ohio State, your linebackers and safeties need to be able to beat Georgia's ball carriers to the sideline. And I think there's going to be a couple times on Saturday night where they can't.
Yeah, they do have some good edge rushers. You've got some notes on them. You want to not completely bash this defense because they've got a couple guys.
They do, yeah. Harrison, JT Tuimoloau. I think I said his name right. Apologies if I didn't. One thing that's interesting is they both line up outside the tackle on 95% plus of their snaps. And Harrison is a really good run defender. Like, he's a complete package. I think he's like Nolan Smith, right? Like, he can unleash and sack you, but he's also very, very good playing the run. The flip side is that Tuimoloau is not a very good run defender. He misses tackles on over 25% of his chances to tackle somebody. He's one of the worst run defenders on Ohio State's team, hand down. And so there's part of me that's like, if Ohio State is going to be so bold as to put him on the field, if it's 3rd and 4, or if they're so crazy as to put him on the field on 1st and 10 or 2nd and 7, like, dude, run right at that guy right there, 44. Really great athlete, really good edge rusher, but not a good run defender. And if he's got to come off the left side of their line and play against Amarius Mims, buddy, we're gonna get some Coach 30 stuff next week. If Georgia wins this game, we're gonna promise you we're gonna get Coach 30 with Amarius Mims pancaking number 44 from Ohio State, because that's gonna happen if he's on the field for too many run plays. But I'm not sure. I don't know. I feel like all I'm doing is just like tearing them apart. They're a good football team, man. They are, and like they play a lot of stuff sound, and they have been a statistically decent defense this year, but they're not like nasty in the trenches like Georgia is. You know what I mean? Like they're not. Like they're really good at what they do. I think my concern for them is like, both on offense and defense is I don't know how they counter if things aren't going well for them. Like if they're not able to do the things that they normally do, we haven't seen them adjust and change their game plan and win, with one arm tied behind their back at all. Really this season. Like it's just kind of, they come out and things go fine enough and they get W's.
Which is interesting. I was just sorting and for anybody that hasn't seen my stuff, all of these plays are cut up and chopped up on YouTube. You can find the links on Dog Central and stuff. But, and one of the ways I have I've scraped every play this year for every team, and I can sort it by EPA. And so clearly the bit for the defense, you want to have negative EPA plays, but it just seemed like a lot of them were coming from the edge, from the edge defenders, and significant portion of it, not near as many negative EPA plays for Ohio State as there were for Georgia, which is not surprising, but it just makes you wonder if, Georgia brings havoc from and puts pressure from all different sides and players, from safeties and linebackers, not just, our Jalen Carter coming up the middle and our edge guys coming. But so I'm just saying, I don't think Ohio State's seen this defense, what it can bring to it. And I think Georgia knows where their defensive attacks are going to come from. Well, I think, they can scheme that. So I'm not saying by any stretch it's one-dimensional and they've got a lot of studs, but I just think that Georgia's going to be able to, and Georgia's offensive line has done exceptionally well pass blocking this year. I know we've talked a little bit about run blocking, whether it be gap zone schemes and what they do better and when they're trying to run the ball. But when Stetson's had lots and lots of clean pockets to throw from, and if he has those on Saturday, I mean, I just feel like it's going to be. I think Georgia can handle these guys, and like you say, and especially if it's a run, if it's a running down or they're on schedule and they're having good plays on first down, you're not going to get a lot of chances to send these guys at Stetson because they can't protect the run.
Yeah, and one thing that I think bodes really, really well for Georgia is that to this point in the season, and I would be shocked if they change this now, especially against Georgia, but Ohio State has not seemed comfortable leaving their defensive backs in man coverage very much. Like they only play man coverage on 36% of downs, and that's usually because they're blitzing in the front end and they have to play man coverage because they don't have enough guys back there to play zone. Worth noting that when they blitz, they blitz heavy. Like they bring with 5 or 6 rushers and over 85% of their blitz packages. So you're not going to see simulated pressures where they have 6 guys up near the line of scrimmage looking like they're going to blitz and 3 drop out and only 3 rush. Like that's not something they've done at all this season, really. Maybe they put a couple in for this game. But what's interesting for me is basically, they're only playing man coverage and not blitzing on very rare occasions. And that is fantastic news for Georgia because you look at Stetson's kind of numbers this year. Like you look at some, and I don't have the full season numbers, but I talked about this a few times, the 12 takeaways. There was a pattern, especially kind of in the middle of the year at times where, with AD Mitchell hurt, like Georgia's receivers struggled to beat man coverage sometimes this season. And it got better when Arian Smith came back in the lineup, and it's gotten better, but it is something that was not great for Georgia at times. And if I was Todd Monken and I was like, what do I want to face? I would pick a zone coverage heavy scheme to go up against every single time, because that's what Bennett has been really good at. He's really good at, picking his spots in those zones, and guys like Roseme and those deep crossing routes, like there's some rapport there. And I think that bodes really well for Georgia in this game. And I mean, if Ohio State does decide to just say, we're going to go for it, we're going to blitz the house, and we're going to, leave our guys in man all day and see what happens, then eventually Stetson's either going to scramble out and beat that blitz and run for 40 yards, or, one of those defensive backs is going to get toasted by, somebody, one of the tight ends, one of the wide receivers. So I don't know. When I look at this game, I was very worried by this matchup when it was announced, just because it felt like Ohio State kind of in the same spot that Georgia was this time last year. A lot of doubters, a lot of good motivation, but man, like when you get into the actual like functionalities of this matchup and just sort of how these teams play and what they like to do and what they struggle to do, like more and more it feels like it's a good situation for UGA.
Yeah, it's easy to think about that in a narrative sense, that Georgia was humbled by their arch rival, and as was Ohio State, and I try not to follow those narratives, but you do. It's what sports is a narrative. It's obviously much more than that, but it's the stories, it's the lead up, the back history of everything that's gone before this, and it makes it exciting and fun, and that's why we get onto it with everybody with Twitter. But just listening to the things and all what's coming out of Georgia locker room, it just seems like this team is on a mission and focused, and we haven't had any slip ups like we've seen in the last few years under Kirby Smart. There's always been one sort of clunker game, and we haven't seen that this year. And I'm not saying that that's going to happen. I just think this is each year we've made huge improvements on both sides of the ball, and it's just like we're peaking right now. And I'm afraid Ohio State's just, the light at the end of the tunnel is a train coming. So I'm going to have to change my score prediction if we keep going on, because normally I'm Munsoning hard and I'm like going the other way.
Yeah, no, I mean, well, God, man, I don't know. That might be a curse then. That might be bad luck.
Exactly. I'm usually wrong.
No, I guess trying to think if there's anything else that like I really wanted to make sure people knew. Yeah, I mean, I guess, is there any other tape or stats that you feel like we should know before we predict this thing?
No, I mean, I say we just sort of start to put a bow on it. I mean, we could look at some more of these. Again, all of this is on dogcentral.com.
Yeah,
so,
guys, I wrote like a 4,500 word preview that's free on dogcentral.com right now, and Josh has written like 5 blogs this month, or 4 blogs this month with film and stats breaking down some of Ohio State's like biggest and most, I think, informative games this season. So you can go read all that stuff for free, and then you should definitely go and subscribe to Dog Central because you want to support that type of work. But either way, I think we've combined to write like 15,000 words about this game so far.
It usually comes in. Unfortunately, we're always scrambling. We all have. This is passion project for all of us and stuff. So sometimes it comes in waves and sometimes it comes in trickles. And today and yesterday, it's been a big dump truck full of information. So if you haven't been to the site in the last couple of days, check it out. There's lots of stuff going on. Okay, so real quick, before we get into score predictions, do you have any bold statements or any little tiny nuggets that, I mean, I guess I wrote about the middle eight and did one of those blog posts, and Georgia has, when it's interesting, Georgia has had more snaps in that middle eight, which is the last 4 minutes of the second quarter and first 4 of the third quarter, more snaps than any team in football. So I tried to get somebody that's on the beat to ask a question and see if that was something that schematically or that they wanted to do.
Interesting. Yeah.
But questions are precious there. That didn't get asked. But I do think that's obviously, the way they control the ball and how they time it out towards the end of the first half, especially, and obviously they always defer the kick when they win the toss to get the ball back in the third quarter. I do think that's critical. We saw Maryland have a lead in that going into that middle eight and then kind of let it slip, and Ohio State took advantage of those missed opportunities and pulled ahead in that game. That game, if you watch it and you go through my drive plays on the site, you'll see that game was pretty competitive, and for the most part, Maryland was keeping toe-to-toe with them, and the same with Penn State, so watch for Georgia to hopefully defer, get the ball in third quarter, and see what they do at the end of the second half, and see if they can put some points up there, and vice versa. I'm sure Ohio State would like to do the same, and winning that middle eight could be a big part of this game. So not really much of a bold prediction, but just one little thing that I've been kind of looking at. Georgia leads the country in 100 and middle eight snaps.
It's good. It's good stuff. I guess one thing that did stick out to me, just kind of like a narrative buster a little bit. CJ Stroud this year has 54 pass attempts of 20 plus yards. Stetson Bennett has 52. Like, this is not this big deep strike offense. And what that says to me is that Ohio State's going to have to drive the field on Georgia just like everybody else. They do not have like a secret recipe that's going to allow them to pass go, collect $200 and score, big deep touchdowns over and over. And I ain't seen anybody do it.
Yeah. They're missing a running back that was a critical part of it. That's, part of the game.
Henderson's pass catching ability was something that I think could have been really big for them in this game.
You're going to hear about all of that. There's going to be a lot of narratives on the broadcast. So you're going to hear a lot about it.
Man, if only they're, if only these guys hadn't gotten hurt, they would have just won a national title. Wouldn't be playing Kansas State this weekend. Wait, what? No, I'm sorry. It's a different team. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and fire away, man. So as far as my prediction, I think this is how this is gonna go. Like, much like the game that Georgia played against Tennessee in November, everybody focused on these wide receivers. In reality, I think this game is about Georgia being able to defend the run with a light box. I think that they'll have an easier time doing it probably against Ohio State than they did against Tennessee. Maybe not easier, but I think they'll do it. I think Jalen Carter will control that middle. I think Georgia's linebackers are good enough to scrape and fill against those outside zones. I have my usual concerns about Georgia's edge rushers, but there's too many dudes that Georgia can throw out there. I won't be surprised if they throw Ingram Dawkins out there, and Michael Williams. Like, I won't be surprised if they go a little bit heavier on the defensive end spots just to make sure they're sound in the run and maybe sacrifice some edge rush ability. And if they want to get after the quarterback, they bring Dumas Johnson and Mondon, and they bring a little more blitz packages. But either way, I think they can kind of manage that conundrum. As we were talking about earlier, like, Ohio State is pretty terrible, like a lot of football teams are, if you keep them from, getting into third and short situations. Like, if you keep them behind the sticks, they're going to struggle. And I think that Georgia can do that more often than not. Like, CJ Stroud is very talented, but he's not comfortable under pressure, and he doesn't often play his best games and his biggest games. So I just am not that scared of the dude. And going into this game, honestly, just because of experience and comfort and confidence, I would take Stetson Bennett over him. Like if I was picking a quarterback for this game, I really would. I saw some NFL scouts say the same thing this week as well. I'm going to be surprised if Georgia can get pressure on the edges very much on Saturday, but I also will be surprised if it matters because I think Georgia is going to really dominate from B gap to B gap with Carter and Stackhouse and those guys. Like I think both running and passing, there's a chance for Georgia to just come up the middle and get straight into Stroud's lap. And the way that he's kind of been, like if Jalen Carter comes out in the first couple of series and blows up somebody and sacks him and then, comes close to sacking him on the next play, like you might start seeing him bail out of the pocket a little early and get kind of happy feet at times. So, yeah, like if that happens, that's going to leave Ohio State in a bad spot. But the thing I come back to over and over is like even if something's working for Ohio State on offense, I'm not sure how sustainable it is. And I trust Georgia from a personnel and coaching standpoint to have enough answers and pieces to kind of counter it and shut it down and then say, okay, now you got to go do this. And I just don't think Ohio State I don't think there's enough ways for them to gain yards and create explosive plays in this game to really stress Georgia's defense in any meaningful way. As far as Georgia's offense, like we've talked about it, right? Like I think, this is an area where Georgia should be able to do a lot of different things. The thing I'm most certain of is that Georgia can run the football in this game. I think Georgia will be able to run the ball well. I kind of have a feeling this might be like a coming out party for Kendall Milton on Saturday night. I'll put that under one of my bold predictions. I think McIntosh is going to be important too, but I think Milton may like bust a long one or just like truck stick one of these undersized Ohio State linebackers and, become a meme or something. But I don't think Georgia's defense is going to make the same coverage mistakes it did against LSU. Like they don't play zone unless they are up 4 touchdowns, which they were in that game. And I mean, they'll play it some, but like whatever communication issue that there was between Ringo and Starks, I think that'll be fixed. I'm not saying Ohio State won't hit plays because they will, but I don't think Ohio State's going and throwing for 500 yards in this game. And even if they do, it's just I think Georgia can score kind of, wherever they want and in some cases whenever they want in this game. I'll be very surprised if Georgia's offense has much adversity on Saturday night. And at the end of the day, like I think Georgia will be comfortable playing this game in the 20s, and I think they'd be comfortable playing in this game in the 40s or 50s. And I don't think Ohio State can say that. And, I think Georgia's going to come out and they're going to rain some fire down and they're going to get an early lead and then they might go a little more ball control and do some different things. But I think Georgia's going to control this one. And I got it I put 41-23 in my article on Dog Central, but for some reason 41-20 has been like rattling around in my head all day. So I'm going to say that tonight. And, honestly, I think it might not even feel that close in some ways.
I'm going to revert to norm and just be like it's going to be a little closer than that. I do think both. I think both offenses move the ball between the 40s pretty well. I think that they're going to be protecting big plays over the top, and I think there's going to be a lot of yards by both offenses and given up by the defenses. But I think the difference will be that red zone and scoring opportunity defense that Ohio State has, sputtered on multiple games in those opportunities, and Georgia has clamped down on those. So I can see Again, Ryan Day is going to kick a lot of field goals, and they're going to be talking about that in Columbus come Sunday morning as they ring in the new year, wondering what happened on Saturday night. And I think Georgia's going to punch it in, and I'm predicting 4 field goals and a couple touchdowns. What was that, 30, 26 or something? Yeah, 4 field goals. That's a lot of field goals. Yeah.
It is.
34-26.
34
touchdowns. Yeah, 4 touchdowns.
So they cover.
And the cover. And I think it's gonna be a good game. I think it's gonna be a really good game. And the Dogs on top.
I did have one question we got on Twitter from our friend Michael at Braves and Birds, who is a Michigan fan. He says, true or false, if Georgia beats Ohio State by fewer than 22 points, they should disband the program due to embarrassment. I'm going to say false, but did think it was kind of funny. That is my segue to see if you have any, quick thoughts or predictions on the Michigan TCU game. If you have any like feel or gut vibe on how that thing might go.
I think everyone's expecting a blowout, and I just think TCU's too gutty, and I think they're playing with nothing to lose. I don't think that they're not as outmanned as Cincinnati and was against Alabama last year. Mm-hmm. And that game wasn't really a blowout. It was just kind of ugly, kind of lethargic, methodical. But I think it'll be a really good game. I'm going to say that I'm going to take TCU in the points. I do think Michigan wins, but there's no way there's no way I'm going to count Max Duggan out of any game after watching what they did all year. And I think they're going to play with their hair on fire and give Michigan all they want. So
yeah, I'm with you, man.
I'm going to go 28-24.
Nice. Okay. Yeah, I don't know if I have I think it's gonna be close, and like you, I just think TCU is just so much more resilient than your average football team, and so much more comfortable playing from behind than most. That I don't know if they can really be phased at this point, even if things are going poorly. So, my bold take is that game will be a lot closer than Georgia Ohio State is. I'm going to say, am I really going to do this? No, I'm not going to. All right. I'll say Michigan 38, TCU 34. In one where maybe TCU comes up short on the last drive kind of game, like an instant classic, so to speak.
I've got Stats War Parker as a TCU fan, so I've paid attention to them more than I have the last couple of years. So I'm secretly cheering for those guys, but I definitely, just from talking about narrative, I want to go through Ohio State, Michigan for a natty. I mean, that's just that's a freaking.
That'd be nice.
It's a dream, dude. Like a dream. Like when I was a kid, those 2 teams were at the top of the list. The teams you wanted to beat. This is amazing. It could be awesome. Well, we got to take care of business on Saturday. Graham, you're going to be there, right?
I will, and if they do take care of business, I will be in LA as well.
Nice.
Yeah, I may have to pack my clubs. I have the first annual Dog Central Invitational or something out there.
I will be in section 112 in a red tuxedo jacket, hopefully making it on the Jumbotron.
Are you really?
Hell yeah.
Nice. In a red tuxedo jacket. You know what? I think let's talk after the show, because I'm not too far from you there in terms of seats. But
yeah, I think you're in the same seats for the Oregon game.
Close, yeah.
Okay.
Right in that neighborhood. So, all right, you guys don't want to listen to us talk about this. Thank you guys for joining us as always. John Tweet Sports was supposed to be with us, but his power went out tonight. So he's gonna post some thoughts and prediction stuff on the Dog Central blog tomorrow, or maybe this evening. I'm not sure, whenever he gets power back. But check that out as well. And if you see us walking around Mercedes-Benz Stadium on Saturday, please say hello. We always like to see you guys out in the wild. And probably most importantly, go Dogs. Everyone travel safe to and from the game. And Happy New Year to you all. And we will, knock on wood, see you next week for a little Ohio State Georgia review / Georgia National Championship game preview. Until then. Oh, wait. There we go.
You got to press a button.
Yeah, I was on full screen.